Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Local law enforcement, health, and school officials all sounding the alarm about a crime that could affect your children. Sexual extortion, also known as sextortion, is when someone uses a person's sexual activity to get favors or money.
Now, we've covered stories in the past of these two boys right behind us. This is 15-year-old Braden Bond, 17-year-old Jordan DeMay, both victims of sextortion, and both committed suicide after sending explicit photos to who they thought was a girl, but turned out to be a sextortion scheme. In Wisconsin, sextortion is not a specific crime. Instead, a suspect will be charged with threats to communicate derogatory info or solicit intimate representation from a minor. Both charges carry a maximum of 3.5 years in prison. It is a crime that's become far too common in the digital age. Victoria Frazier joining us now live in the newsroom with some tips for parents to help keep their children safe online. Victoria?
Chris, today local law enforcement and medical professionals came together to raise awareness about sextortion, sharing signs for parents and kids, as well as the efforts lawmakers are taking to crack down on these crimes. Republican State Representative David Steffen, along with other lawmakers, are working to get Braden's law approved by the Senate committee. 15-year-old Braden Bone died by suicide in March after becoming a victim to sextortion. The bill would create harsher penalties for sextortion crimes and was unanimously passed by the state assembly in June. Representative David Steffen is a sponsor of that bill.
Children who are being impacted, but we just aren't even aware of it. And so the number of reported crimes versus actual crimes, there's a big difference between the two. We want to do everything we can, of course, to prevent that by providing some educational opportunities within our schools, and also making sure we have an effective way to bring these people to justice who are perpetrating these crimes on our kids.
Green Bay Police Investigations Commander Rick Bellinger says he's seen an increase in sextortion crimes over the past 8 years. It's something he encourages victims to report directly to police immediately.
Biggest thing that we want to do is offer the families and the child, the victim, some kind of resources to get past this. The second goal, and a quick second goal, is getting somebody held accountable for it. Because for that one victim that comes forward, there's probably 10, maybe who knows how many others, and getting that suspect identified and getting them shut down is pretty critical.
Pediatric psychologist Tiffany Bourne sharing signs for parents to look out for.
If your kid's behavior changes drastically kind of overnight, which can be hard because in the teen years, behaviors and mood is changing and shifting. But if things just seem really different, they become more withdrawn, they're more isolated, they're going into their room more often and not coming out, that might be a sign that something is going on.
And the importance of creating a safe space for children to feel comfortable sharing.
When your child gets in trouble for saying they turned in their homework when they didn't, how was your reaction then? That's going to change how comfortable they feel like coming to you when something really big happens. And monitoring that online activity is really important, having those parental controls. But doing that with your child and with your teen whenever possible.
And Representative Steffen told me that he is currently working on a separate piece of legislation to educate people about sextortion. He says he hopes to present that in the fall. Cammie?